Maykopsky District, Adyghe Oblast, by Richard Smyth. Read by Blake Ritson. 14th of the 5th, 1949. Arrival of Comrade Chirikov by mule at the Bielaya camp, 125 kilometres west of Mukhul-Shapolyana. See Appendix 5.2. Appeared travel-stained, but in good health. Speech of welcome by Partcom Secretary Comrade Mursky. See Appendix 1.16.9. Comrade Chirikov swiftly established cordial relations with local populace. Nikolai Mikhailovich Nikitin, a military veteran, 20th Rifle Division, 1940-45, and hunter, not known to be politically active, is engaged as guide for a fee of 3 Soviet rubles. After dinner, Comrade Chirikov bathed and retired early. 15th of the 5th, 1949. At sunrise, Comrade Chirikov and Comrade Nikitin travelled by horse southwest into the forested hills. Comrade Chirikov carried surveying equipment and specialist botany apparatus. He was seen to consult a book, later identified as Comrade Gulyanov's Birds of the Northwestern Caucasus, 1927. During the journey, the two men ate sandwiches and drank vodka. They appeared companionable. At 11 a.m. they dismounted and made makeshift camp in an area of mixed woodland. Comrade Chirikov was briefly excited by the sight of a plant, later identified as the yellow spring gentian, Gentiana ostenica. During the afternoon, Comrade Chirikov explored the forest, taking copious notes in a blue-jacketed journal of Finnish manufacture. Comrade Nikitin smoked tobacco and played grand patience. Shortly before sunset, he fed and watered the horses while Comrade Chirikov cooked mushrooms and onion over the campfire. The two men drank and talked for some time before retiring at midnight to their tents. From what could be heard of their conversation, it concerned women, forestry, hunting, leatherwork, seafood, and the great Stalin plan for the transformation of nature. 16th of the 5th, 1949. Comrade Chirikov was absent from the camp at daybreak. He was located shortly after 0900 in the upper limbs of a Nordman fir, Adyghe's Nordmanniana, deploying binoculars believed to be of military issue. On return to camp, he spoke enthusiastically to Comrade Nikitin of shelter belts and intercropping. Comrade Nikitin appeared listless. Later, he was seen vomiting into a bog myrtle. Mirica Galley. At 1500, the men struck camp and returned to Bielaya. 17th of the 5th, 1949. Comrade Chirikov spent the day in his headquarters, apparently writing up his notes and preserving cuttings from the forest expedition. Following consultation with Captain of State Security Marin, it was decided that Comrade Chirikov should be engaged covertly in conversation the following day. 18th of the 5th, 1949. On emerging from his headquarters at 0600, purportedly with the intention of listening to the dawn chorus of the birds, Comrade Chirikov was approached by a covert operative and asked his business in Maykopsky district. Chirikov: I'm a functionary of the main administration of Field Protective Afforestation. They've sent me here to inspect and assess the composition and condition of the forest steppe, with a view to the establishment of plantations. Shelter belts, you see, on the steppe north of here. What a lucky fellow I am. Comrade Chirikov then initiated conversation on the subject of dawn-clouded yellows, the covert operative having persuasively adopted the identity of an amateur entomologist specializing in Lepidoptera. The conversation ended when Comrade Chirikov gave a sudden start. He was asked what had occasioned his surprise. Chirikov: I'm damned if that wasn't the call of Krupa's nuthatch. Sitter Krupery. Comrade Chirikov then departed at speed, headed for nearby trees. 19th of the 5th, 1949. Having been observed making preparations with Comrade Nikitin for an expedition, Comrade Chirikoff was approached by a covert operative who offered to accompany the men on their journey. Comrade Nikitin was heard to make a remark of lewd character. He was sharply rebuked by Comrade Chirikoff. Comrade Chirikoff then described the proposed expedition as rather dull work. Chirikoff: "We are to travel northward to the steppe. We will spend 3 days, Nikitin, 3 expletive days, taking soil samples and meteorological readings. It will, you see, be no pleasure outing." Comrade Chirikoff was asked to characterize the purpose of the work. Chirikoff: "The famine of 46 drove thousands to their graves. In the countryside of the Ukraine, men pillaged the cemeteries for meat. This cannot happen again. Look to the United States. Look to their Mr. Roosevelt. 22 million trees in 8 years. The Great Plains Shelter Belt. An end to soil erosion." Comrade Chirikoff was asked how he came by such detailed statistics. Chirikoff: "Why, I keep in close contact with silviculturalists around the world." While Comrade Chirikoff continued his preparations, this information was relayed as a matter of high priority to Captain of State Security Marin. Later in the day, Comrade Chirikoff was persuaded to allow the covert operative to accompany him and Comrade Nikitin to the steppe. Comrade Nikitin remained unconvinced. 20th of the 5th, 1949. The party departed for the steppe at daybreak. The weather was bright and cold, and the wind blew from the west. Comrade Nikitin led the way on a mule he named Mudarkin. Sometimes the party kept to defined tracks. At other times they travelled cross-country. Comrade Nikitin seemed fond of saying, "A shortcut, I promise, a fine expletive shortcut." At 08:30, he took his first drink from an unmarked bottle. Conversation was desultory. Comrade Chirikoff seemed engrossed in the study of the arable farmland through which the party travelled. By noon he had gathered some 35 soil samples. Progress was necessarily slow. At 16:45 the party passed a stunted hornbeam, Carpinus caucasica. It was the last tree they would see all day. At 1700 Comrade Chirikoff pointed to the sky. Nikitin: "A plane, a Polikarpov PO2 if I am any judge." Chirikoff: "You are no judge at all, Nikitin. Your eyeballs are pickled. It's a lesser-spotted eagle. Aquila pomerina. See? It is headed north for the summer." Nikitin: "Damn thing looks like a plane from here." Chirikoff: "Besides, you lumphead, the Polikarpov PO2 has not been seen since the war ended." Nikitin: "I've seen them dusting crops." Chirikoff: "What a fine fellow. A fine fellow." This last observation alluded to the eagle and not to Comrade Nikitin. It was noted that Comrade Chirikoff appears on all points to be an unusually well-informed individual. The party made camp on a south-facing escarpment. Rations of cold sausage and adulterated bread were shared. A little vodka was drunk. Chirikoff worked on his researches while the daylight lasted. The covert operative feigned perusal of Comrade Bielsov's Moths of the USSR and Adjacent Countries, 1940. Nikitov sang coarse military ballads, and before the party retired for the evening made a series of lewd suggestions to the covert operative. Note was taken. 21st of the 5th, 1949. Comrade Nikitin gathered plover eggs for breakfast. Comrade Chirikoff expressed sympathy for the mother bird, but ate his omelette hungrily. The party travelled east-northeast until shortly before noon, when camp was made in the open grassland, and Comrade Chirikoff embarked on an extensive series of topographical surveys. He travelled swiftly and over considerable distances. He appears an assured horseman. It was not always possible for note to be made of his whereabouts. Comrade Nikitin, under instruction from Chirikov, spent the day folding paper into envelopes for seedlings. The covert operative assembled a moth trap, baited with molasses. Darkness fell before Comrade Chirikov had returned. Nikitin. He is a canny fellow right enough, but this is a deceptive country. Here he is much the same as there. Even a canny, clever fellow might lose his way and not find it again. The operative expressed confidence in Comrade Chirikov's navigation skills and predicted his imminent return. Nikitin. Aye, but what if he doesn't, eh? What then? I'll tell you what then. It's just me and thee and the steppe. The butterflies and the bees and thee and me, my pet. The covert operative maintained close surveillance of the dark grasslands. Birds were heard to call from the west. Nikitin. It will be a cold night. In fact, the weather was mild. At 2023, the light of a lantern was observed on the northern horizon. It was seen to be moving toward the camp. Soon, it could be discerned that the lantern was carried by a man on horseback. Comrade Nikitin yelled across the steppe. Nikitin. Chirikov, you! Expletive. How you worried us! Comrade Chirikov rode into the light of the campfire and leapt from his horse. He appeared tired, but unharmed. Chirikov. Feed and water this beast, Nikitin. A splendid evening. Do you hear the partridges calling? What is this, a moth trap? Oh, what fun! Why, we must light the lamp and see what comes along. Matches, Nikitin, matches! As Comrade Chirikov went to work deftly with paraffin, matches and lamp, he was asked about his day's work. Chirikov. I must have ridden 100 kilometres. Dry work, really, terribly dry. The mapping of elevations, the measurement of moisture and wind speed, the sampling of soils, the unceasing sampling of soils. Terribly dry. And yet, comrade, the wildflower scents, the rippling of the wind in the grass, as though the steppe were a beast stirring from sleep. The calls of storks high overhead, the space, the sky, the air. Why, it all makes one feel a fortunate fellow indeed. The lamp was lit. Drinks were poured. There was a smell of warming molasses. The campfire was allowed to peter. The covert operative pressed for further details regarding Comrade Chirikov's findings. Chirikov. It will all be in my report. I have no appetite to speak of it tonight. Besides, look, someone is coming. A moth had flown into the globe of light made by the moth trap lamp. It flew erratically in orbit around the trap. Chirikov. What is he, comrade? He is a handsome little thing. The covert operative suggested that the insect was Periphanes delphinae, the peas blossom, and met with no disagreement. It was unclear whether this reflected a correct identification or the good manners of Comrade Chirikov. Later scrutiny of Comrade Bielsov's volume was inconclusive. Nikitin. He's getting away. Chirikov. Molasses and lamplight are nothing to him. Love is what he seeks. Nikitin. Slim pickings out here, boy. Chirikov. Let him go. Let him continue with his search. Let us wish him good fortune. The moth was soon out of sight. Soon afterwards, the party retired. 22nd of the 5th, 1949. The party breakfasted on bacon, onion, and black tea. Comrade Nikitin voiced his intent to spend the morning hunting for great bustard, Otis tarda. Chirikov. You will have no luck, Nikitin. We're south and west of the bird's range. Nikitin. There will be no roast bustard meat for you, comrade, when I return home with a bag full. The badinage of the two men, though irreverent, remained broadly good-natured. Comrade Chirikov fell into thoughtful silence while assembling his surveying apparatus for the day ahead. On being questioned, he replied that he had been thinking. Nikitin. A dangerous business. Shirokov. I can see the trees. In my mind's eye, a great, rich tapestry of trees, tied like a belt across the steppe. I see that it must be done. The land must be cultivated, the topsoil preserved, the winds diverted or diminished. But there is this question of how it is done. It was asserted by the covert operative that the researches of Comrade Lysyenko had surely established definitively the optimal process of steppe afforestation. Seedlings are planted in small groups and work collectively to combat weeds and pests. Crop plants, winter wheat, flax, alfalfa, will aid the little trees in their struggle. The trees assist one another until the time comes for the lesser saplings to seed to the greater. This new principle of botanical science, the operative said, is central to the great Stalin plan for the transformation of nature. Here Comrade Nikitin burst intemperately into the conversation. Nikitin. The plan is, expletive, and Lysyenko is a, expletive, fraud. Shirokov, calmly addressing the operative. You seem to know a terrific amount about it, comrade. Note was taken. The query was deflected. Comrade Shirokov invited the covert operative to accompany him in his surveying. Shirokov. It will be less strenuous than yesterday. That is, if you would not sooner be butterflying. You have such a handsome net. A good cane grip, silk mesh. I envy you, your outfitter. And I have hardly seen you put it to use. The operative explained convincingly that there would be ample time for both. By 10:00, the operative and Comrade Shirokov were out of sight of the camp. The day was overcast, but not dull. Hares raced through the feather grass, steppe penata. Comrade Shirokov drew the operative's attention to a serpent eagle flying across the wind. Shortly before noon, he stopped his horse and invited the operative to imagine a forest where, at the time, there was only grass. Shirokov. It seems madness, does it not, comrade? A woodland of oak and beech, hornbeam and larch, here, where there is not a tree in sight, where a man might see clear to the church towers of Rostov simply by standing up in his saddle. But it can be done, I think. I think it can be done. A woodland of birdsong, of scampering squirrels and martins. Men will come here to coppice the young trees or to hunt deer and bear and wolf, and none of your scrawny steppe wolves either. Mothers will bring their children to gather nuts and play in the groves of bluebell and wood anemone. Lovers might come here, eh? The air will be sweet. Can you imagine it, comrade? Can you see it? Note was taken of Comrade Shirokov's ardent expression and emotional tone of voice. The operative civilly reminded Comrade Shirokov that the purpose of the great Stalin plan for the transformation of nature was primarily agricultural. Shirokov. But of course, that too, comrade. That too. Note was taken. A trumpeting noise was heard in the west. As though in response to a signal, Comrade Shirokov spurred his horse. The operative followed. At 12:23, a shallow river, see Appendix 5.3, was reached, at which Comrade Shirokov pulled up and gestured to the opposing bank. Shirokov. Demoiselle cranes. Gras Virgo. 8 tall birds with silver bodies and black and white plumes were dancing on the far bank of the river. Up they leapt, and down they stooped. Their broad wings billowed like fine cloaks. The sunshine was pale. Comrade Shirokov watched in apparent rapture. Shirokov. Better than the damn Kirov, eh? The operative offered no reply. Survey work occupied most of the rest of the day. See Report of Officer P.P. Shirokov, incomplete, 23rd of the 5th, 1949. 23rd of the 5th, 1949. Breakfast was taken hastily, as there was much to be done. Nikitin. You will run those horses into the ground. Shirokov. It's only one day more, Nikitin. Nikitin. This, expletive, Fool's errand has already taken 2 days too long. Comrade Chirikov and the covert operative rode due north in bright sunshine. Wildflower meadows seemed to unfurl beneath the blue sky. Comrade Chirikov demonstrated commendable mastery of plant identification. It was noted that Comrade Chirikov is an individual of remarkable mental and physical gifts. Chirikov: "It is funny to think of some hairy fellow hoeing weeds from his alfalfa here a few years hence." It was observed that, according to Comrade Lysyenko, the hairy fellow might take his ease while the seedling oaks worked in partnership to drive the weeds away. Chirikov: "Let us not speak of that now." It was remarked by the operative that there might be said to be a sort of beauty in the steppe, despite its lack of productivity. Chirikov: "There is indeed a beauty in its uselessness." Operative: "It seems a dangerous thing to say." Chirikov: "Perhaps. But who is to overhear us, 100 kilometers from anywhere?" Note was taken of an ironic note in Comrade Chirikov's voice. Operative: "You said that lovers might come here, once it has been forested." Chirikov: "All lovers crave a shady bower, unless, God forbid it, poetry has misled me." Operative: "It seems to me, comrade, that lovers might just as well come to a steppe as to a forest." Chirikov: "I suppose one place might be as good as another." Operative: "It is good enough, after all, for the love dances of the demoiselle cranes." Chirikov: "And for other love dances, too." To the south, from far across the steppe, 6 rifle shots sounded in a pattern of 1-2, 2-1. Comrade Chirikov calmed his horse and then, taking binoculars from his pocket, scanned the southern horizon. Chirikov: "I see nothing. It must be that happy fool Nikitin blazing away at what he fancies are bustards. They will be chuckers, no doubt. But we were saying, comrade." Operative: "You ought not call me comrade." Chirikov: "Why then, what am I to call you?" Operative: "You ought not call me anything." Chirikov: "You do not wish me to call you by your name?" Operative: "What one wishes is a secondary concern." Comrade Chirikov looked up and pointed to a pair of large raptors flying northwest. Chirikov: "Imperial eagles, I think. I have not seen them before. You are NKVD, of course." The operative offered no reply. Chirikov: "You're certainly no lepidopterist. Peas blossom my foot. Am I condemned? I do not recall having spoken loosely until today." The operative offered no reply. Chirikov: "I tell you, comrade, that I am condemned, one way or another." Note was taken of a certain pain in the eyes of Comrade Chirikov. The operative explained to Chirikov that a particular prearranged signal was to have been given should the unfortunate necessity have arisen of placing Comrade Chirikov or any other individual in state custody. NKVD officers had followed the party from the camp at Bielaya and were stationed nearby in a state of readiness. Chirikov: "And you have given the signal, I suppose?" Operative: "I have not." Chirikov: "Well then, perhaps—" The operative explained that the prearranged signal was a series of 6 gunshots in a pattern of 1-2, 2-1. Chirikov: "Nikitin!" Operative: "I did not know." Chirikov: "They will be waiting for me at the camp." Operative: "He saw that you doubted Lysyenko." Comrade Chirikov spoke briefly but volubly in respect of Comrade Lysyenko's work and character. Operative. Run! Your horse will carry you to Rostov, perhaps. Chirikov. But you would be made to pay for the loss, comrade. To the east, the demoiselle cranes were heard to hoot. Comrade Chirikov turned his horse into the sun. He spoke the name of Comrade Nikitin and smiled. Chirikov. See, comrade, how cleverly we work together to pluck the weeds from our midst. The horse of the operative was also turned toward the sun. The two long shadows were seen to touch, and so become a single shadow. This concludes the report of Lieutenant of State Security M.A. Pavlichenko. It may be construed as constituting a letter of resignation. It will be sealed in a seedling envelope and deposited in the river where the demoiselle cranes dance.